Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Den of Thieves 2 Pantera, starring Gerard Butler, O'Shea Jackson Jr., Evan Ahmed, excuse me, and Salvatore Esposito, directed by Christian Gudegast. Now, I really liked the first one. I gave that one a 7.0 out of 10, but will this improve? As I have seen it twice. I don't know if it tells you if I like it or not, but come on, let's get into the movie and we'll find out. We start with the heist in Antwerp International Airport in Belgium, where Donnie Wilson, returned by O'Shea Jackson Jr., along with a Cleopatra named Giovanna, played by Evan Ahmed, and some others as she runs the infamous Panther Mafia, not Black Panther, but Panther Mafia in Europe. And we don't see the others' faces except for Giovanna and Donnie, and the rest of the crew don't really matter anyways. And other than these settings, other than that, the settings of these thieves, other than setting these thieves up, what was the point of this setup? Well, I did find it hilarious that throughout the movie, when they were speaking different languages, it says the language, what it was, and where it was from. And I'm thinking, is this film Europe for dummies? As Donnie and Giovanna get away with the heist. Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, Big Nick, returned by Gerard Butler, is in a courthouse as he's getting divorced, as we saw in the last movie. And he lives in a car, his car, I'll say, because this motherfucker is now homeless, thanks to his ex-wife. And he sees on the TV what happened in Antwerp as he's meeting with his former job. And yes, including Bob, and I should just bring it up now, he got fired at the end of the first one or something. I couldn't explain what the fuck happened. But Bob is included, who was in the last movie, as he believes it was Donnie because he just knows that. And that's a thing Big Nick can't just let go. And I don't like returning to Big Nick, as Gerard Butler comes off rather unlikable in this film. In Nice, France, Donnie meets with Giovanna and Slavko, played by Salvatore Esposito, as they take Donnie to his new place with a hell of a view, where the Panama Diamond District, is, and gets a new job there as Jean Jacques. And I'm gonna try to say his real name as his last name instead of that name, because it seems a little silly to me. And I'm not even going to try to say his last name either, while Big Nick picks up Holly Merriman, who was the bad guy's wife in the last film. And he takes her to a cargo box and asks where Donnie and the money are at. And she says Donnie is doing a job in Nice, France. And this movie is slowly paced, as I was getting confused for half the fucking movie. And Donnie, as Jean Jacques, meets with his new employer, Chava, from the Panama Diamond District at a restaurant. And where the fuck was this movie going? I don't know, and honestly, I don't care. Donnie as Jean Jacques goes in the building, gets the job at the Panama Diamond District, which makes me think it's a bank, and his accent doesn't come off believable. But I like his presence here. But the thing is, it's not as good as the first movie. Just like the first movie, while we meet up an older man who's a criminal. I don't know what the fuck to call him now, and it might be more explainable in the next film. But I don't know who he is, as he'll matter at the end of the movie as well as the next movie, because that's very irritating. As Jean Jacques and Donnie investigates the building, or he works for the heist, while Big Nick gets the okay to go to Nice, France, as he comes in and gets some pointers while living in his car, as he gets a backup plan as a marshal of some kind, as Donnie gets a job with Giovanna, Slavko, and meets Dragan. I don't know if I'm saying that fucker's name right. Marco, and others. I don't know who the fuck they are, and they don't fucking matter to me for the rest of the movie. Big Nick gets to Nice, France, and meets the captain of the cops around. And I don't know what the characters are saying in France, as they felt like a problem from the get-go. As Big Nick sees Donnie and says he's not the guy he's looking for bullshit. as it jumps all over the place, which is why this movie is so motherfucking confusing to me. While Big Nick insults the French by saying French food sucks as the captain comes off as he has no taste, and Donnie goes out for a drink like a criminal and gets home and sees Big Nick is in his place as he broke and entered, and Big Nick demands to be a part of the Panther Mafia, and I can't tell if it was undercover or not. As Donnie brings up how the word comes around that the cops fired his ass, which was hysterical as this is painfully acted as this scene as well as in this movie from start to finish. The elderly villain, I'm going to call him for the rest of the show, arrives to Nice, France, and gets gelato. And last time I checked, isn't that an Italian type of ice cream? While Donnie makes Giovanna meet with Big Nick outside of and the team believes he's a cop, and Donnie asks to put something in a safe vault, and which I never learn what it is, as it doesn't really matter to me. And the nighttime comes, and Big Nick meets the Panther Mafia at a bar of some kind and tastes some kind of strong alcoholic beverage and hits some joint, and they go over the plan while stoned. And is that necessary? Is that really necessary? Absolutely fucking not. They get drunk and high at the same time as Big Nick dances with Giovanna, while one of the teammates, Marco, used to date her, and he trips out, and at one point Big Nick and Donnie get into a fight and get kicked out of the bar or club or whatever the fuck this is, as Big Nick gets briefly in trouble with the French cops, and he and Donnie ride a couple of scooters and crash as they head to a restaurant where they can get water and shawarma at a restaurant scene of some kind while acting out loud as hell and get to know one another. And I don't care about their backstories because it drags the movie a little too long. And this is a long movie at 2.5 hours. And I kept looking at the time like, how long have I been watching this for? As it turns out, it's been only an hour, as the editing is very choppy in my opinion. Big Nick and Donnie are kidnapped by the elderly villain's men, and they go to the middle of the ocean and get thrown into the water, as we learn something about Donnie stealing a diamond that's called the octopus, and demands them to get it back and push them into the water, and Big Nick takes off his shoes and makes Donnie do the same thing as they swim to an island, and Big Nick says he's out because Donnie stole the diamond, and to get back to Nice, France, look at the Panama Diamond District, as the guards don't do shit as it might get complicated. And Big Nick comes up with the only way the guards don't look up is up, and they get set up Big Nick to be a part of the Panther Mafia, as it's official, and some of the past 10 minutes could have been cut out of like the island, as it's not necessary. They set up Big Nick as Donnie, or I keep forgetting Jean-Jacques, head of security guard, and says he will help him with the safe box first thing the next day, as Donnie sets up some music, and a couple of others change the music to real music, to party music, to eventually jazz, which is hilarious in a stupid way. While Big Nick is set up with a suit by Giovanna, and he brings up how he was just divorced and says he has a couple of kids, as she prefers honesty out of bullshit. And it almost looked like he was hitting on her, and she says, "Don't fuck this up, and don't fuck me over either." And I know exactly where this is going, as it gets so telegraphed when I get there by the end of the movie, which is fucked up in so many fucking levels, and puts Donnie's things in a safe box, as well as the octopus diamond Donnie stole in the beginning of the movie, I guess is when it was stolen. And now I get the opening set up now, as it took a while to make sense of it. And honestly, it's a terrible idea to wait until an hour and 20 minutes into the movie to explain all this bullshit to begin with. The Panther Mafia get a car with guns in the back seat, while Big Nick goes to the church where the French cops kids go with him every Sunday, and they have a beautiful family, while he, like Nick, is unfortunately divorced, and after taking the kids to their mother, he talks with Big Nick about being careful about the Panther Mafia, and Big Nick blocks cameras while going back to the safe box, as they test the alarm and nighttime comes and the guards prepare themselves for a soccer game while the thieves get set up to do the job and get to the Panama Diamond district while Giovanna watches from the top and watches the others get in the building start on the endless heist that goes on for a little while as it starts off intense. But how much do I not care if these thieves get away or not? And how is my mind on other things? Let's continue with that in the next segment because this movie just bored the shit out of me during this scene. They get to the building from up top while it's intense for damn sure, but at this point I was just bored as the heist is pretty damn bland as they get inside and go in a deep elevator, and in my mind was on other things as this isn't holding my interest or attention for that matter. And they climb down the elevator and get to their floor while the guards are distracted by their soccer game. And if I were the guards, listen to the game and keep your goddamn eyes on the fucking monitor, as that was always a problem with heist movies in general. And eventually get in, as the thieves get in with no alarms going off whatsoever, as they get into the safe and steal things. And my mind can't focus on how intense was this robbery, as it feels endless. And I'm just bored. Like I said before, and I'll say it again. The housekeeper is back and takes everything while Donnie wants to find the octopus diamond so desperately while Big Nick tells him to leave it, and he does eventually find it and takes it with him while the thieves manage to get out of the house as the housekeeper gets to the safe room and sees they've been robbed while the thieves climb up the elevator and get to their floor, and Big Nick pulls everyone as well as what they've stolen up to the floor, and they get outside as they go back to where they came from, which was a different building, while Big Nick is climbing and a giant pole falls down, and Big Nick gets back up and tosses his bag on their side of the building as the guards look around for thieves until Big Nick is stopped by a security guard who doesn't speak English and does something stupid and gets shot on the alarm with a bulletproof vest, and the alarm sounds while the guard is not dead as he was wearing a bulletproof vest. And why in fuck's name should I care at all? Because the truth is, I don't care. While the thieves drive a Porsche, and eventually Big Nick gets picked up by the Porsche, and they drive away while the security guards are stupid enough to not catch the thieves on time. And seriously, how stupid is this movie is beyond me. When they get to a garage, a place which watching cameras try to get the license plate of the Porsche, they pull out the paint color and change the license plate. And that was the only smart thing in this movie, as they pulled off in other heist movies, as the housekeeper and the security guards say they've been robbed, as the elderly villain's men follow the thieves and have a chase shootout as they fire guns from the back seat, which was a funny and a ha-ha way callback. And the chase sequence was a headache, for me anyways, to get through. Until they get hit and crash, and they come up to the thieves as the thieves get out of the car, and they see some men working for the elderly villain. That's, as I was confused enough as it was, what the fuck was going on here? And they hand over the octopus diamond, and he gets a tracker or something, as I was very confused what the fuck was all about. I mean, Jesus Christ. The thieves walk away and eat at a fancy restaurant, in Italy, and meets Chava and her husband Mario, and they toast until the fuzz comes in and take away Giovanna, as Big Nick fucked over her, like I expected earlier in the movie, as well as Donnie, and lets Big Nick go with the slap on the wrist, which to me is a bullshit ending. But that's not all there is left, as they stare at Big Nick who like he was a rat of some kind, because come on, he is. And Donnie was stupid enough to fall for it after the last movie, where he got out of it smart, and Big Nick regrets it as the elderly villain sees in the newspaper Donnie has been captured. And Big Nick visits Donnie in prison and talk about how he doesn't feel better, about how he saved his life, as well as how even they are at the end of that scene. Big Nick says something to Donnie like sit by the left, and I don't know what that meant at all until we get to the next scene. The next scene comes as the elderly villain's men gets Donnie out of the prison truck, where I believe he was going to Guantanamo Bay, but come on, that doesn't make sense. He was in France, and that's not in France. Where they pick up Donnie, thanks to Big Nick's advice, as I'm led to believe he had something to do with it. And they take Donnie to see the elderly villain in Sardinia because he wanted to meet Donnie and wants to hire him. As Donnie asks what's next, while Big Nick smiles about it as it's setting up for part 3 of this movie. And honestly, I was pretty fucking nervous about the fact that there will be a part 3 at this point. And the climax, as well as the whole movie, is fucking confusing at times. But how confused was I? Let's get to the rating. I'll give this movie a 3.8 out of 10. Not as good as the first movie, as there were quite a few callbacks in the beginning of the movie. And as far as the rest, I got confused as to what the fuck was going on. And I like Donnie again, but in Big Nick, I don't. And for the rest of the characters, I don't give a fuck about them, as they mostly don't matter at all whatsoever. And I just don't understand what the characters are saying, and that felt like a problem from the get-go. And the elderly villain will matter in the next movie. And I'm thinking, why is he introduced in the first 30 minutes, as this is very irritating? The movie is bloated, and it's too long for a 2.5-hour movie, as it jumps all over the frickin' place. And maybe that was part of the reason I was so confused as to what I was watching for half the fucking movie. And this movie is painfully acted from start to finish, as the accents were hard to understand at times. And I guess I know why there's a sequel, but it doesn't tell a good story, which is really sad after enjoying the first movie. The editing was choppy, and do I care about the backstory of what Donnie and Big Nick are talking about in this movie? I do not, as this isn't about that. So the answer to that question is absolutely fucking not. As I was entertained by the first movie, but here's not so much. So unfortunately, this is a non-recommendation for this movie, as it slows way the fuck down. And I couldn't help but looking at the time every 10 minutes, as I wanted it to be done at this point, and I wanted to move on. And the fact that there's another sequel coming makes me pretty fucking nervous. But at the end of the day, I just didn't like this movie. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for this Den of Thieves retrospective. I'm sorry that the second one didn't turn out as good as the first one. But until we get a part 3, run, thieves, run.